Hey guys, this is Matt Wenning at WenningStrength.com, and today we are going to talk about one of the most important muscle groups on your body that I think doesn't get enough credit and enough work for most people, and that is spinal erectors. So let's get to it.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss. They ain't wanna help me, that's what made me a boss. You can't kill my confidence, I think I'm the man. We don't give a f, that's what they don't understand. I'm back again like flu season, I broke records while loose leaf, and I'm coming down my roof leaving, don't give a f, I don't care. Did the by my lonesome, no wonder now I'm on one. No shortcuts on that long run, all I really want is my share.
Now for most people, when they train legs or whatever, you're going to notice that most people can leg press or do leg machines more than they can squat or deadlift. The reason is not because their legs aren't strong enough. A lot of it is because their posterior chain, predominantly their spinal erectors, are not strong enough to either one, hold position, or two, strong enough to help the legs do their job. This becomes a huge problem, and I'll tell you why. The lower back and spinal erector muscles grow very slowly. And the reason that I believe they grow slowly is because if we look at these muscles in an anatomy chart, we start to realize that they're completely encased in bone and they don't have a massive amount of blood flow. They don't have massive arteries like the quadriceps or anything of that nature, right? They get fed a lot through a smaller vascular system and some through the lymphatic system. This means that they grow slower and are more temperamental. By what I mean by temperamental is the fact that you guys ever had a lower back pump so bad you just had to lay on the ground in the fetal position? I think if we've trained long enough, we all have. And the reason is because those small vascular systems that control the feeding system and the export of lactic acid to the spinal erectors are so small that they take a long time to filter out any kind of lactate buildup, soreness, etc. Right? We notice that I think when we get our lower back sore or pissed off, when we start noticing it seems to take longer to heal than everything else. I truly believe this is because of the lymphatic system being a slower system and the vascular system in these muscle groups just being less than the other muscles. So this causes it to grow slower, which causes more injury. Why? Because if we train our legs really hard with squatting, deadlifting, leg pressing, etc., the legs are going to grow much quicker because of femoral arteries and massive feeding systems. But that's not the case with the lower back. So I hope this understands why a lot of people bow out of weight training before they reach their potential, because the lower back is usually a limiting factor. There are some key exercises that I truly believe have built my lower back to the point of having muscles that look like PVC pipes, which was insanely important to squatting 1,200 pounds in gear and close to 900 pounds raw with all-time world records. The three major exercises that I want to go over today that I think are vastly important for not only building lifts, but building those massive spinal erectors that, in my opinion, are the most impressive muscle groups on any person you can possibly have. With big spinal erectors, you're probably going to have massive legs. You're going to have a big all-around, more muscular body because you can do bigger shit. The first exercise is deficit sumo deadlifts. In my personal opinion, sumo deficit deadlifts are not only amazing for posture, but they're also amazing for tactical athletes. Why? Because for tactical athletes like military, fire, and police, you're probably not going to pick something up this high off the ground like a barbell. You're going to be picking stuff up off the ground completely. This means that your ability to be flexible is very important. But building this flexibility also builds bigger spinal erectors. So as we see in this video, we could do this stiff-legged, we could do it heavy as hell like I'm doing it, but deficit deadlifts force your lower back to have to work harder. Now, how do you keep away from getting injured? There are some key things to doing this exercise that really cause you to not get injury. What is that? Well, one, you notice that I do a ton of stuff double overhand. Since being retired, I don't need to flip my hand. I find that flipping my hand, as you can see, it kind of rotates my shoulders. That causes uneven pressure on the left or right side, depending on what your preference is on your hand grip. Doing a double overhand, your lower back, mid back, and upper back stay more symmetrical. This symmetry allows you to deadlift a little bit harder and a little bit more often without putting adverse spinal compression in a rotational fashion. Now, the other thing is it limits to your grip strength. So I find that you guys should all be able to deadlift 405 double overhand with no hook before you start playing around with the over-under hand. We have been doing this a long time in the fire service and found nothing but positive results. The next exercise that I think is important, underutilized but people need to be very careful with is good mornings. Good mornings are amazing at building this posterior chain, especially spinal erectors, because it forces you to isolate those particular muscle groups. But it's also why we call the rear side of the body a posterior chain. Usually when you're working the lower back, everything else has to work in conjunction with it on that side, meaning the glutes, the hamstrings, etc. have to play an immense role in these movements. But I find that the good mornings really do put a lot of pressure on your spine. Now, one of the best ways to do this without increasing too much spinal vertical compression is to utilize hanging kettlebells. So as you can see in this exercise, we are utilizing hanging kettlebells, which does not allow us to use near as much weight as if we were using a regular standard bar with regular standard weights. I find this to be very beneficial, not only for stability, but also limiting your amount of weight you can put on with still activating the same amount of tissue. The next exercise that I think is super important, and I give a lot of credit to Louis Simmons for at least developing it in the United States, is the reverse hyper. The reverse hyper machine is not only a great machine for developing the spinal erectors, as you can see in this video, but it also provides some traction to the vertebral discs. So out of all the exercises that I've listed today, the most important one I feel is the last one, which is reverse hypers. Why? Because I feel that it does just as much restoration as it does building, which the other two exercises build up but could cause more mileage. So what you'll find is that we don't use a ton of sumo deadlifts all the time, and we don't use a good mornings all the time, but we do put them in the program from time to time. This is very important to understanding that you need to have a very high calculation of what you're doing with compressive movements to non-compressive or traction movements. And that's why you will see us do so many more reverse hypers than we will doing deficit sumo deadlifts or good mornings. It's also why I'll be 43 years old this year and have had zero back issues other than some slight strains. So I hope this video really helps you to start learning how to train smarter. Now, it took me many, many years in order to understand when, where, and how to put these exercises into play. I find that the most economical way to understand this is to get some manuals, but the best way is for online coaching where we can dial everything in for you and your particular needs at this time. So I hope to see you on winningstrength.com and talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Lately I've been living like I can't take a loss.